the answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. President Trump at his task force briefing yesterday, which was a solo act for the first time, made news by essentially consummating what he had telegraphed last week about future U.S. funding of the World Health Organization.
We will continue to engage with the WHO to see if it can make meaningful reforms. For the time being, we will redirect global health and directly work with others. All of the aid that we send will be discussed at very, very powerful letters and with very powerful and influential groups and smart groups, medically, politically, and every other way. And we'll be discussing it with other countries and global health partners, what we do with all of that money that goes to WHO.
Yeah, and we had to do something because WHO was in bed with China and they lied to us, and this could have been prevented.
The WHO pushed China's misinformation about the virus, saying it was not communicable and there was no need for travel bans. They told us when we put on our travel ban, a very strong travel ban, there was no need to do it, don't do it. They actually fought us. The WHO's reliance on China's disclosures likely caused a 20-fold increase in cases worldwide, and it may be much more than that.
Yeah, Walter Russell Mead has a good piece in the Journal about how the lying and obfuscation from China continues, and the World Health Organization has aided and abetted China from the outset. So,
if anybody wants an enemy, that should be the enemy, not President Trump. I mean, China let this happen. The WHO was their accomplice.
So we'll see. It's not defunding in perpetuity. It's defunding with the hope that there's some possibility of reform. That's the same position that our friend and colleague Lanhee Chen has taken out at the Hoover Institution. But it very, very well may be that we're going to have to found a different organization or do something different in terms of how we interact with other countries. Interesting note on China, just in terms of the accuracy of their reporting.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that China,
those are real numbers.
With respect to the fatalities, China fatalities from the COVID-19 virus essentially stay stagnant at 3,300.
3,300. That's such a lie.
Yet their seasonal flu deaths in China are reportedly 91,000.
Okay.
Banging
my head against the wall.
That disparity between the seasonal flu deaths and COVID-19 deaths is exponential at the country level, is exponentially more than any other country on the board. So it just adds more to the suspicion, as well it should. Now, so that was one development, and of course the other was Trump starting to provide the indication that before the week is out, there will be some new guidelines promulgated by the task force for states to reopen, talking about how this will differ from state to state, and he's going to let the governors run their individual states.
Are you basically lifting your slow the spread before the May 1 deadline?
No, I'm not at all.
How many
The governors are going to be running their individual states. Some of them will say, no, I can't open now. And some of them may last longer than we even would think. Others will say, I can. You can go. I don't want to mention states, but there are numerous states that are in great shape right now. They're viewing the rest of the country like, we don't even believe this is happening. We have a lot of those states. They're set to open practically now. I mean, they would be open now. We're going to let them open sooner than the date. We're going to pick a date. We're going to get a date that's good, but it's going to be very, very soon, sooner than the end of the month.
For more on that latter part, a man whose name was mentioned by the president last night at the task force briefing, he is Stephen Moore. He's an economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics, and a member of the Recovery and Reopening Task Force, or whatever they're calling it. Steve Moore, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
So, hi, guys. And I got to just tell you a quick story that I was watching that president's press briefing last night and listening to what he was saying about the WHO and reopening the economy. And that at the end of that presentation, he started rattling off some of the names of the people who were going to be on this economic recovery task force. He said Art Laffer, and Steve Forbes, and then he said, and Steve Moore. I almost fell out of my chair because I had no idea that was coming.
Oh, really?
Well, Mr.
Really?
President,
Congratulations.
that's a little thank you, but it was funny because I was like, shouldn't have somebody told me beforehand? So anyway, that was funny, and I'm going to be paid a huge amount of money to do that. But it's a real honor, and I hope that we can get the president. I like what he said. I love that clip that you just played. He had it exactly right. The federal government provides the guidance to the states, and then the states individually, look, states like Nebraska and Iowa, and states like Oklahoma and Idaho, they should have opened up, a month ago. I mean, they don't
should
have
have never have closed.
Yes,
they shouldn't
exactly.
have closed.
And so that's really important. But I got to get one thing off my chest because I just think it's the hypocrisy of the left is just knows no bounds. And so, I as part of my job, I have to read the New York Times every day. It's sort of the punishment I get for. And so I actually have to even read their editorial page. And their editorial, I mean, they must have editorialized 10 times in the last month. Donald Trump, he has declared a national emergency, a nationwide shutdown of the entire economy. He can't let these states like South Dakota and Idaho, have lax rules. It has to be a nationwide policy. Okay, then the other day Trump says, well, I am in charge here, and I'm going to have these states reopen. How dare Donald Trump take the rights away from the states? I mean, you can't win with the media. So that's
right.
This is the right approach. We believe in federalism.
Yes.
We believe in the 9th and 10th Amendments, that the power resides with the states. I think Trump is doing exactly the right thing. And when is Illinois going to open up?
You're on the task force. Why don't you call JB and find out? You tell us.
Because I've heard it's not going to be till June, and I'm here to tell you guys if you guys wait till June or the middle of June to reopen your economy in Illinois, there aren't going to be many businesses left to reopen.
Yeah, well,
I'm moving before that happens.
They're dwindling by the day, regardless.
We need you in Chicago, Amy. Come on.
I've given them everything. I'm done.
So, with respect to reopening, Steve, from the economics side of it, from the business side of it, I mean, what is the thinking? What's the collective thinking that you and Laffer and Kudlow are bringing to the table?
So we have a little group that we've put together as part of our little committee to unleash prosperity. We have 2 or 3 principles, and one of them, you can write these ones down. Number 1, get no later than May 1st. We've got to get states open no later than May 1st, because if we get into, as I was saying, if we get into June or July, the economy is going to be in wreckage for a long, long time. It'll be calamitous for our country. You'll have not 16, 17 million more unemployed people. You have 35 million people unemployed, and that's a future I can't even imagine. So it all depends on getting the economy open quickly, so these small businesses don't fail and people have jobs to come back to. That's number 1. Number 2, you ready for this, Dan and Amy? No more spending. No more spending. We passed this $2.2 trillion bill. It's not working out so well. The logistics aren't. Whoever thought a $2.2 trillion federal program wouldn't work? But it isn't working very well, and you've got a lot of businesses that need the money. A lot of small. In fact, Steve Forbes and Laffer and I supported the idea of short-term loans for businesses so they could get through this, but it's turned into a money free-for-all. Quick story, my wife was telling me she's on the board of last night, she had a board conference call for a local Presbyterian church, and the chairman said, hey, why don't we get one of these loans, that the government's giving out, because, we can it converts into a grant. We get $75,000 free money from the federal government. And my wife said, well, wait a minute, are we financially unhealthy? No, we actually have a reserve of $500,000 in the bank. Well, why are we going to take out this loan? Because it's free money. And I was thinking, that's the attitude of a lot of these businesses. They're taking the money because it's, quote, free, and we're bankrupting the country at the same time. So no more spending.
I used to feel that way too, but then I talked to a man who owns a trucking company. He said, I heard what you said, like trucking companies, we shouldn't apply for those because we're still working, but they're not carrying as many goods as you would think.
Well, that's true.
Because it comes to produce, because farmers are destroying their crops and dumping millions of gallons of milk because schools aren't open, cruise ships aren't open, restaurants aren't open.
Yep. Oh, it's
And
true.
I mean, it's
you're
ridiculous.
right.
I know a lot of people need food, but there's the beans being destroyed and corn. It's just unbelievable.
Yep. It's a calamitous situation. It is a catastrophe what's happening right now. It's why you got to get the economy up and running. I don't care how many of these aid bills they pass, $2 trillion, $4 trillion, $6 trillion. I don't care how much money the Fed prints. They're printing trillions and trillions of dollars, flushing the economy with cash. You're right, Amy. If people aren't working and they don't have jobs and they're not producing things, then the whole economy grinds to a halt. So that's why getting things up and open. And you mentioned a trucking company. Many of the trucking companies are up and running, but some of them aren't, and they can't function right now. So guess what? That's the kind of company you want to make sure gets a short-term loan for 6 months, taxpayer guaranteed loan, so they can get through this crisis and they can literally be up and running and rolling. By the middle or under the summer, and yet here's the problem, Amy. That this small business that needs the loan to keep its doors open, it can't get the loans because all these big companies are signing up for the money, and they don't even need the money because they weren't going to lay off people in the first place, but they just view it as free money. We should have never converted this program from a loan program to a grant program, because then it's like just and by the way, the lines in the banks, they ran out of money, Dan, in 2 weeks.
Well,
they passed a $2 trillion bill, and they ran out of money in 2 weeks.
Well, there's the issue is there's about $250 billion of the $359 billion that's been dispersed through more than 1 million loans made, a million loans made in 10 days. That's pretty impressive in terms of anything the government's involved in. We talked about this before with respect to the payroll protection program. We disagree, but what about the $250 billion that the president and congressional Republicans want to want to put into that fund to refill it, so that some of those small businesses that are in queue get that temporary money? Because we're still talking about another 2+ weeks before it's likely that you're going to have a significant number of states open.
So my line on this is no more money to the program until we fix it. It has to be fixed. And we got to get rid of this idea that businesses, I'm getting calls every day from businessmen and women who's, how do I get this free money? How do I sign up? These are companies with, say, 25 employees. They haven't laid any off. In fact, let's
talk to your bank.
60% of the companies are running, right?
Well, there's 5,000 community banks. There's 5,000 banks participating. Talk to your bank. It can't be that complicated. There's a million people who've gotten loans.
That's exactly right. So I just want to make sure we fix the program and turn it into a true loan program where the businesses have to pay the money back to the taxpayers, not feeding at the trough. But the most important thing is Governor Pritzker and Governor Cuomo and Governor Newsom and all these governors are lining up at the trough saying, give us money, give us money, give us money. They want $2 trillion of federal taxpayer money. And what Illinois has to be doing right now, and you guys should be saying this every morning, Illinois has to start rapidly, and Chicago, the same thing. Cut your budgets. Get rid of all the crazy things in your budgets that you don't need. Your revenues have been cut in half. And I'm here to tell you, I'm going to fight every single day in Washington along millions of conservatives around the country to make sure the federal government does not bail out Illinois, does not bail out New York, does not bail out California, does not bail out New Jersey. It's not fair to the states like Texas and Florida that spend per capita 1/2 as much as Illinois does and New York does and New Jersey does. Why should the states that actually have been good guardian of taxpayer money have to bail out the pensions and the massive overspending in states like Illinois and Chicago? Look, I love Chicago, but its budget is a monstrosity.
No, it's good. I'm glad you're going to do that. I'm glad you're going to hold the line. I hope you do, because you're exactly right. There's absolutely no reason to horse trade unfunded bailouts for unfunded pension and healthcare liabilities in states that have made their own bed pre-pandemic, like Illinois. Absolutely.
Well put.
Absolutely. He is Steve Moore, noted economist.
Oh, by the way, Dan,
is
it actually snowing? Is it actually snowing today?
It is
Yes,
snowing.
it is.
We got